Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me. This is Michael Moore over at Sincere American Writing. Yeah, so this is my first video attempt, I'll call it. I've never been much of a video person. I've never recorded myself on video really at all, or almost never. And to be honest, it's something I've kind of resisted. I guess I've always been a bit of a Luddite. I've never been a huge social media person, although I've been on and off some social media for a long time. But I really was using Substack, or have been using Substack over the last couple of years since I started in August of 22, as a mostly text only sort of format to, write to put my writing down and share my writing with people, whether it be memoir or autobiographical fiction or nonfiction essays, political commentary, polemics, etc. And I've always done that. I've always written, in a way that makes me feel like I'm being honest and telling the truth. And that's how all of my published fiction has in little literary magazines and journals over the decades has been. And I wanted to continue that and further that on Substack. But you know, as sort of technology develops and we get more like AI and more opportunity to do different formats and mediums here on various platforms, including Substack, it just seems like a good idea to try this. So my thought is, and I'm going to experiment with this, but my thought is, I'll do this one free. Maybe I'll do a couple free, but pretty soon I'll probably do video exclusively for paid subscribers. So hopefully that'll be like a new benefit for those of you who are paying for Sincere American Writing, and hopefully it'll encourage free or new subscribers to potentially go paid as well. So I just wanted to kind of briefly talk about the year, since we're getting to the end of the year here. 2025 is weeks away, less than weeks away. And yeah, it's been an exciting and somewhat terrifying, but also interesting year, globally and nationally. And for me in my own personal life, as many of you know who've been following me for a while, well, first of all, I should start with, I started my Substack on August 21st, 2022. And at the time, it was much more politically motivated, sort of a critique of far left extremism. And it was actually called Michael Moore's Anti Woke Newsletter, which is fairly funny now that I think, looking back on it. But I get what I was after. But I never wanted to be one of those writers that was defined solely by culture war issues or even one niche issue. Even though sometimes some people on Substack or other platforms would say you got to find a niche, but I'm not a niche writer. I write across the spectrum on all kinds of topics and subjects, and so that's what Sincere American Writing, which became the new name, has become. Everything from writing about writing to writing about literature to memoir pieces to serializing books to fiction to even poetry, nonfiction essays, social and political commentary, as I've said, philosophical ideas, you name it, short stories, portions of novels, etc. And I've built up a nice little following over the last couple of years, and it's been really nice. Also, in that time, 3 days after my first post, August 21 of 22, I had my first date with Brittany, who is the woman that I almost instantly, well, I guess I did instantly fall in love with. And we've been together ever since. And I was living in Santa Barbara at the time. I had just been living for a little over 2 years in New York City, and I wrote a memoir about that. Two years in New York before, during, and after COVID. I'll put a link in the notes on the post. And so I left New York. I thought I was just taking a visit to California, but my father ended up being diagnosed with terminal melanoma while I was there in Santa Barbara, California. So I ended up staying there and never going back to New York. My friends actually cleaned out my apartment and shipped all my stuff to me and and that was that. So I stayed in Santa Barbara. I started Substack. Then I met Brittany, and we fell in love. I ended up leaving Santa Barbara after I think about a year and a half, and moved in with her in Lompoc, about an hour north of Santa Barbara, where she was born and raised. We lived there for a little over a year and a half, I think closer to a year and 8 months, and then more recently moved to Portland. And before all that, my father did, after 23 months of caretaking, my mother and I caretaking for him, he did pass on June 2nd of 2023. So that happened. And just after that, not long after that, a few months after that, Brittany and I got married. And so it's kind of like these two things happening almost simultaneously, one painful and one joyful. And which I think kind of highlights the paradox of life, right? The duality inherent in being alive, the push pull, yin and yang, tug of war, both externally and internally. And so anyway, and then eventually now we've for the past year we've had this plan to move to Spain, to Madrid. We're still working on that. We're going through the immigration process now. We're closer than we've been the whole year. Let's put it that way. We've had some hurdles and some stops and starts, but we're getting closer. We're hoping to move in spring, hopefully late February, early March. In the meantime, 3-ish months ago, we moved to Portland, Oregon. Long story, we sold my house in the Bay Area. We bought a multi-unit here. It all kind of happened almost on a whim, not on a whim, but sort of. And so all of a sudden we're living in Portland, and actually we love it. It's a despite what we've heard and many people have heard on the media, in the media, it's actually really great. Although downtown is half of a Cormac McCarthy novel, it's a little bit obscene downtown in certain areas for sure, but it seems to be getting better. People seem to be moving back to Portland. That's what all the data shows. And our neighborhood is fantastic. We're right by Reed College. It's really beautiful. It's a really nice place to be. And I love walking around and seeing people reading physical books, like serious literature, um, which is something I'm not used to. All the mini libraries here that you just see, the little neighborhood mini libraries they always are packed with incredible books, which I just find enlightening and hilarious and perfect for me. So yeah, so anyway, that's kind of been the year. And then of course we all know, 2022 is sort of like the tail end of COVID in terms of the variants morphing, and sort of that the end of that sort of COVID phase sort of coming to a close, more or less. I know there are some people that still feel that COVID is still raging. But for the most part, for most of us, it was a time where COVID was fading out. Um, and that was an incredibly difficult time for so many people, myself included, living in New York City, 3,000 miles away from all family, isolated in a little two-bedroom apartment in Harlem. And again, you can read my memoir to get more on that. But yeah, and of course, the rise of Trump again, and the two assassination attempts, and just Kamala Harris and that whole fiasco, and all the cultural war battles online and um, externally to some degree as well. It's been a really frenetic and chaotic year. But I just want to say that I feel like, though I've gone through some really painful stuff in the last year, like my father passing, I also feel like I've grown a lot, and I feel like I've matured a great deal in the last 5 years, especially the last 2 to 3 years. Um, I've been sober for over 14 years now, which is just amazing and shocking to me. And I've for so long, I was trying to get a literary agent. I was trying to go, this traditional route with my books, and I got so close with one book in particular, which I've written about on here before, and it just didn't pan out. And I think there are a number of reasons involved with why that was the case. Some of it was pretty clearly, I think, ideology. Um, but also it's luck, it's talent. There's a lot of competition out there. You got to be in the right time, right place. The right person has to see your work at the right moment. It's so many factors, and almost basically all of those factors are out of my control. So, and we're seeing major publishing kind of um, shift and sort of become less relevant over time. Ditto, mainstream media as well, and we're seeing kind of a fracturing of media, which has pros and cons. But Substack is a great example of how publishing is shifting right to more of a direct readership, writing directly for your subscribers, and you own your own content, and you don't have to tussle with advertisements and gatekeepers like agents and whatnot. And I think that's a great thing. I think it's a beautiful thing. And here I am. I'm 41 years old, about to be 42. I have 3 books out, and I have another book that's about to come out very soon in the next week or two. And I'll tell you about those in a minute. And I feel very grateful. I feel very satisfied as a writer, writing what I want to write and how I want to write directly to readers on Substack, self-publishing my work and doing it on my own terms, because that's always the person I've been. Is I've always done things on my own terms, for better and worse. And the gatekeeping was holding me back from reaching the audience that I felt like I could reach, and I feel like I'm now reaching at least part of that audience. I'm continually trying to grow, and I am growing, not necessarily as fast as I would like to be growing, but I'm growing, and that's the important thing. And I'm looking at the long term and the long arc. So yeah, so I'm grateful for all of you subscribers, free and paid, for everyone who reads my work. It's I wouldn't be doing this without you, because you can't write in a vacuum. You can't write into a void. You have to write for people. So thank you for that. And yeah, I think that's about it. I'll just mention the books again. I've mentioned them a lot. I know I do too much self promo. In fact, I wrote a piece about ambition and kind of the curse of ambition, as a confession. I'll put that in the show notes. But so I'm aware of it. If there's anything I have, it's self awareness, even of my flaws, and I have a lot of flaws. That's just who I am. I'm not my flaws, but I'm a man. I'm a complex human being with a lot of flaws, as many of us are, as almost all of us are actually. So anyway, so the books. So the first book I want to mention is my kind of literary, punk rock, young adult, coming of age novel, called The Crew. And it's sort of like, the way I've described it is like, think Basketball Diaries meets Dead Poet Society meets Catcher in the Rye meets the Sex Pistols and Ramones in the year 2000. So it's like prep school, rich kids, punk rock literature. It's deep, it's intense, it's fast paced. It's got a lot of good reviews on Amazon. Um, if you're interested in that kind of writing, I highly recommend it. It took me really basically 15 years from first draft to publication on that book. It's incredibly, it's gone. I don't know. I lost track of how many drafts of that book I did. I mean, 50, 80. I don't even know over the years, but I'm really proud of that book. And I'll put all these links in the notes in the post. And then there's 2 years in New York, before, during, and after COVID, which is my fictional memoir, about living in East Harlem and the Upper East Side, um, in New York City, in Manhattan, in 2020. Starts in 2019 and goes through COVID during 2020, and what my experience was like, especially in Harlem. It got really violent and really intense. It's quite a story, and so I put that all down. And then the third book is called The Grim Room. It's a totally fictional, non-autobiographical, with 4 points of view, psychological suspense novel. It's about a guy who is in prison and gets out and tries to find his ex. And it was his ex mother that was the one behind putting him in prison to begin with. And he's freshly sober, and he's trying to be a good guy and do the right thing. When he does finally find her and discover that she's engaged to be married to someone else, he starts to crack. And that's sort of the basic story. And I won't say any more than that. You'll have to read it. But so those are my three published books, and then I have another a book which is nonfiction, a collection of nonfiction essays um, called "Controversial," the Substack essays, and that's going to come out in a week or two, maybe less. And it's just a collection of my most controversial nonfiction Substack essays that have come out on sincere American writing um, from the beginning. So from between August of 22 to this year, very recently, quite recently. So it covers everything from the first Trump assassination attempt to JD Vance to a bunch of literary heroes like or anti-heroes maybe is the better way to put it, like Nabokov, Henry Miller, um, Jack Kerouac, Charles Bukowski. It's and I do. There's some book reviews in there. There's some commentary on identity politics and race. There's all kinds of stuff. There's some writing about writing, such as whether people can write without bias. Um, yeah, so it's kind of the cream of the crop, the best of the best of my controversial stuff over the past 2-ish years. It's I'm working with a pro book cover designer right now. We're batting some ideas around for the cover. We're getting pretty close to finalizing that. I've already edited and revised and worked on the essays and have that all compiled, and I have all the front matter and all that stuff. So that should be coming out very, very soon, and I hope that you will buy it. I'm not sure exactly what the price is going to be, but for ebook, it's going to be pretty low. Probably another like $1.99 or $2.99 for an ebook, and a little more expensive, obviously, for the print book, but it probably won't. I'll probably price it around $10 or something. So I hope that you will, when that comes out, I hope you'll consider buying it and spreading the word and telling friends and family and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's it for my first video post. I hope you enjoyed it. And I guess I'll wait to see what the numbers are on this and see, the stats as far as views and likes and responses, and see if people really like this or not. um, so yeah, thanks again for watching me and for reading Sincere American Writing. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do subscribe. Consider becoming a paid subscriber. It's 5 a month, 35 a year, which is I know there's a lot of Substacks out there, and there's only a limited amount of money in your bank account. I totally get it. I have the same problem myself. It's hard to pick the ones you're going to pay for. We all have to go through that gauntlet, but hopefully, maybe you'll consider mine um, being on that list of the ones you do pay for. So, with that, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, um, Happy 2025, and hopefully, this coming year will be different in a good and unexpected way. Let's hope. All right. Take care.